Hello, everyone, and welcome to OHSCA Interviews. I'm Vincenzo Calla, and I'm your host for today's episode. Today, I'm happy to have with me the MP for Edmonton Wetaskiwin, the Honourable Mike Lake.
It's good to be here. Thanks, Vincenzo.
Thanks for joining us. Mike was first elected in 2006 and from 2008 to 2015 served as the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Industry. In 2012, Mike was sworn into the Queen's Privy Council. Prior to electing federal politics, Mike worked for 10 years with the Edmonton Oilers Hockey Club, where he served as National Accounts Manager, Director of Ticket Sales, and Group Sales Manager. Mike was recently appointed to the Conservative Shadow Cabinet as the Conservative Shadow Minister for Mental Health, Addictions, and Suicide Prevention. Thank you, Mike, for your time, and thanks for joining us today.
That's great to be here.
We're great to have you, and we're going to have a good discussion today, and we'll start off. What better way to start off a discussion than with our 4 questions? So we're going to start with question 1, which has been, what has been your favorite experience as an MP so far in your many years?
You know, I've been a member of Parliament for 16 years, so I've had a lot of experiences over that time. Broadly, I will say that my favorite experience was about a decade long when we were in government, a much more enjoyable experience than being in opposition. But in terms of individual experiences, there have been a few things. I love the constituency I served, and so anything that involves meeting with constituents, constituent roundtable meetings that we have, our Christmas open houses and those types of events are fantastic. And so really enjoy serving constituents. I really enjoy meeting young people. So I enjoy speaking to students in high school or younger or in university. I do a lot of speaking at universities as well, and really enjoy that. In terms of I guess accomplishments or things that individual moments of joy. 2015, we got, I have a son with autism. He's now 26 years old. His name is Jaden, but he was 9 when I got elected. And in 2015, we got Canadian Autism Partnership Working Group into the federal budget at a time when we were trying to get the budget balanced. And that day was a pretty big accomplishment. And very much remember finding out that was going to be in the budget, and sort of an individual moment, I think, that stands out for me.
Well, those are some really important issues, especially to you, as I was doing my research and reading your bio, and I've noticed on social media and through various campaigns about autism, I can see that you're a strong advocate for it, and having that personal experience is definitely part of it. And I think just especially what you're saying about constituents and meeting with constituents, that's a super important part as your role as an MP. And I'm sure it helps you a lot while you serve them in the House of Commons in Ottawa, as you're a little far from your riding. Ottawa's pretty far from many ridings, unless you're in Ottawa like I am, but usually it's a little far. So obviously getting their input is probably very important to you as an MP in Ottawa.
For sure. I mean, it's the most important thing we do is making sure that when we're here, we're connected to what our constituents are thinking. And you have to be very deliberate about having those conversations and those points of interaction. We do about, in a regular pre-COVID time, we'll do about 40 to 50 in-person roundtables a year. So 2 hours with 16 constituents sitting around a table, talking about whatever it is that they want to talk about. And it's, no one roundtable gives me an exact picture of what people are talking about in the constituency, but the sort of aggregate of now hundreds of those roundtables over the years really do give me a good feeling. And so, as we're doing our work, no matter what it is that what we're working on, and how important it might be in our individual roles on the team, if we're not serving our constituents, we just simply won't have that opportunity to do it anymore. That is the number one priority for us.
Well, we'll talk more. Actually, the questions that I have actually talk a bit about constituency work after, I guess you could call it that it kind of fills in. But I think that provides good input to you. And especially now, I'm sure that even though there might have been an issue raised many, many years ago now, you've been doing this for a little bit now. So I'm sure that a lot of things still stick with you over years, and you sort of still remember that as you continue to serve. So we're going to go a bit off of the elected politics for a little bit until we get to our third and fourth question, but we'll go into our second question, which I got from Jack from Milton. And he asks, what are some hobbies that keep you busy outside of the world of politics?
Well, you kind of touched on one of them in my previous life. So prior to getting involved in politics, I worked for the Edmonton Oilers for 10 years, right out of university. So my first 10 years after I finished with my business degree in university, I worked for the Oilers. Now, the only reason I worked on the business side for the Oilers is because I wasn't good enough to play for them. So my dream would have been to play professional sports of some sort, whether it be hockey or baseball or football. Love them all, but wasn't quite good enough. But it's still a hobby: exercise, working out, and working out so that I can still continue to enjoy playing hockey and playing soccer, which I love. Baseball when I get a chance, or football. I love them all, and so exercise is a pretty big part of my life, and I love music. So when I'm working out, listening to my cardio playlist or whatever it might be, or just when I'm driving from one place to another in the constituency, there's some a lot of driving involved in the constituency, and love listening to music. So
Both really good things that both go together really well. And I think that especially it's important that, I guess, who was I talking with? I think when I was talking with Glenn Motz last week, we talked about the Ottawa bubble and sort of like getting caught up in politics. And it's definitely something that a lot of, I guess, MPs could say that they struggle with, getting caught up with politics. And it's good that you have that sort of escape sometimes, just to go out and do exercise and sort of not be at your desk all day. I'm sure it's a help for you, and especially I'm sure there's some pretty stressful times on the Hill and in committee, and when you're trying to get stuff done, I'm sure it's a good way to sort of step back from politics sometimes and just sort of turn on your playlist and go for a run or go to the gym or something like that, or play sports.
Yeah, you have to make the time for it, though. In this world, if you don't make the time for it, it just doesn't happen, because you could be working 24/7. So it has to be something that's planned, maybe, or deliberate, or from time to time, just that you need a break to unwind, and going for a walk and listening to music for 10 minutes even can help clear the mind.
And I'm sure it makes a world of difference for sure. And we'll talk about mental health soon, but I'm sure that plays a role into mental health as an MP. So we're going to go into the third question. And this question is one of the ones that I came up with, which I was sort of wondering about. And the question is, what were some challenges that you faced as an MP in 2015 when you were going from sort of the government side of the House of Commons to the opposition side? Did you have any struggles or I guess challenges as an MP going from side to side?
I think for sure. I mean, the reality then was that I wasn't on the opposition side ever before. I had been elected in 2006 when we formed government. And so I'd only been in government almost a decade, and that's unusual to spend that much time at the start of your political career, I guess, or whatever word you use for it, as on the government side. And so moving from government to opposition, I think at first it was tough, mainly because you lost, and I'm competitive, but it sets in pretty quickly that you're not going to be able to do the things from a policy perspective that are important to you. You're not going to be able to fulfill your platform. And for me, I'm very much a fiscal conservative. I believe in stewardship of the economy. I believe in the power of balanced budgets. I believe in a balanced approach between energy and the economy and the environment. And all of those things, the direction that we've gone since 2015 is the wrong direction, and it's intensely frustrating. It's frustrating for our constituents, and it's frustrating for us both individually and on behalf of our constituents. And so, and that's the biggest thing when it comes to individual things. So when it comes to whatever it might be that you're working on, something that's important infrastructure-wise in the riding, or program-wise in the riding. It's not as easy to have a conversation with the minister responsible for it, because in government, they're in your caucus room every Wednesday morning. You can have a conversation with them, but in opposition, it's not the same. And I found that when I'm talking about those things that are really, important to my constituents or important in other areas that we're working on, oftentimes you think you're having a good conversation, but then nothing actually ever comes of it because you're not a priority. You realize that fairly quickly. So it is, the worst day in government is better than the best day in opposition, as they say, and it's very true.
Well, I mean, especially as an MP, that obviously every constituent has issues, all 110,000 or so of them. They all have issues and that they would like to see addressed by their MPs. And especially if they have issues that are super important that a lot of I guess, people in your party believe in, and say you decide that you want to propose it as a bill or a private member's bill or something like that. I was talking with my law class actually today about parliamentary process, and surprise, surprise, I was talking about parliament in class today. But I think that I'm sure you can attest to this a lot more. I'm sure it's harder to, well, it is harder to just sort of pass a bill or a private member's bill on the opposition side as well, because then you need to gain that support and really try to get support from fellow opposition parties as well, I'm sure.
For sure, Vincenzo. I would have also been very surprised if you weren't talking about politics in your class. I've seen the podcast a little bit, but absolutely. In any way that you're sort of trying to move forward with something, it's harder to get support. It's incumbent on us, though, as members of parliament representing our constituents, it is incumbent on us to try and find ways forward. So, the role is different in opposition, and if we show Canadians that we're credible and professional and principled and and are advocating for the right things, then we'll be in government one day. And we show that through asking great questions in the House, through finding a combination between being respectful, absolutely, and I think that there's a lot of there's too much of a lack of respect, I think, in the way that we as human beings are communicating with each other, let alone politicians these days. But respectful, but fierce in a sense, or passionate, informed. But when we're advocating for the things that we're advocating for, I mean, the future, literally the future of our country is on the line in terms of where our country is going to go, the direction that our country is going to go right now, when we're running the deficits that we're running. When you take a look at what's going on with inflation and just the cost of living more broadly, when you take a look at our employment situation, when you take a look at the so many of these big issues that are facing Canada right now, these are issues that ought to be passionately debated in the House of Commons. We've really struggled over the last few years with COVID, or last couple of years with COVID. We were we being the government, I'm not in the government, but the government was way too quick to shut down Parliament in those first few weeks. Understandable, but we should have been looking for ways that we could follow the very best evidence around public health, and still had our Parliament sitting, still had committees sitting, and experts testifying, coming before the House, before the House committees, and Canadians working together through their Parliament to address the pandemic, to address all of the other situations related to the pandemic. And these are all things that we need to be talking about. We need to be talking about them passionately and debating them fiercely, but at the same time, respectfully.
Well, those are some great points that you made, and especially now going forward from recovery of the pandemic, and now there's so many issues that are facing us as Canadians. I mean, inflation, like you mentioned, is a big issue, and right now there's, well, at the time of this filming, there's a crisis in BC now, and in the floodings, and this summer there was the fires in BC. So BC is getting devastated by natural disasters recently, and there's so many issues across Canada. And like I said, especially recovering from COVID, it's something that you as parliamentarians, as MPs, and in committee and on the House, the floor of the House of Commons, and question period, and whenever you're doing your parliamentary work, and especially constituency work, again, taking from the constituents, it's important to sort of look at a way to move forward now and trying to see where you go forward. And this is a great way to go into our next question, as mental health is a massive issue affecting every single Canadian. I can bet my bottom dollar that every single Canadian is facing some sort of mental health issue or has faced some sort of mental health issue in the past year. So Vasu wanted me to ask how, actually, it's kind of a long question, but we'll get through it. What experience do you bring to being a shadow minister for mental health? And the second part, how do you plan on helping Canadians, especially your constituents who are facing mental health issues from the shadow minister portfolio of that?
Yeah, so it's a great question. In terms of my experience, clearly my professional background is not working in mental health, but my life experience has lots of connectivity to mental health. In fact, if you take a look at my time as a member of Parliament over most of the last 16 years, it's helping people who are vulnerable has been at the core of what we've worked on. I mentioned I have a son with autism. He's significantly affected, nonverbal, and advocating for him and advocating for people like Jaden around the world through my international development work has been just such a huge part of my life. In my personal life, I've got people very close to me who have struggled with addictions issues, struggled with severe anxiety. My own father passed away in 2003 from a lethal dose of OxyContin. So when you're talking about the effects of the opioid crisis and everything else, there's things that are really personal for me that connect me into this conversation. And really, the approach that I'm taking right now is an approach to listen and learn, which is, I think, something that is going to be critical for us as a society, is in to move away from the constant bombardment of one another, not just politicians again, but everybody on social media and all of these different things, as we've gone through a really, really difficult time. And hopefully we can tap into world-leading expertise around these big issues that we're facing to come through this and become a society that is, trying to understand each other, trying to find common ground, and has services and supports there in a timely fashion for people who need them. Because at some point or another in our lives, we're all vulnerable at some point in time. We all can be givers of help in some periods, and we all need help in other points in time. And I think that understanding is hopefully something that expands in me as I get a chance to meet more people in this role. But hopefully something that I bring to the table to start with, and will serve us well as we move forward.
Well, I think that especially now is a better time than ever to have a Ministry of Mental Health. I mean, as I've mentioned before with my peers and on interviews, I don't necessarily agree with who the minister is, but I'll leave that to the Prime Minister to figure out who the minister will be. But I just am happy that it's an actual ministry now, and it's great that there's a Ministry of Mental Health. Now is a better time than ever. It's long overdue, but it's finally here. And it's great that we as a party have you as a shadow minister, and to sort of focus on this issue. And it's great that there's going to be a bigger voice and a bigger role for mental health in Parliament now that there is sort of that finding a way out of COVID and trying to tackle the issues that COVID has brought about, the climate issues, the mental health issues, the social justice issues. There have been so many issues that have come out of the pandemic, and that it kind of shined a light on, and mental health is definitely one of them that every Canadian needs a focus on.
For sure. And, regardless who the minister is, clearly we're in a different party, and our hope would be that all of the ministers would be Conservative ministers one day. But, when you're in opposition and you're elected to represent constituents, and, we've got a big portion of the country that elected us, it's our job to go to Ottawa and try and help create the strongest country we can. And one of those areas, as you've mentioned, that we've been behind on, that's sort of overdue for attention, is mental health. And this will absolutely be a team effort within our party. Someone like Todd Doherty has done unbelievable work out there with his suicide 988 suicide hotline that we've got to continue to pursue and turn into a reality. There are countless colleagues in our party that push it forward, including, of course, Aaron O'Toole in his in his speech to Conservatives. It was one of his 5 pillars of his statement to the Conservative convention. There you are. You're pointing at it right now. It was number
Right there.
13 on the
Number
list.
3, yeah.
Yeah, and I was proud of the fact that it was so highly positioned within the conversation that he was leading and during the campaign in our platform. And I think when you see a minister named in the portfolio, I think that we probably played a role in raising the importance of that. And now we've got to continue that conversation and work in whatever way we can to not just criticize the government, certainly hold the government to account when they can do better, but also reinforce and work together when we find areas where we agree.
Well, especially now that, I mean, you mentioned it perfectly. Our party had a strong platform, and the fact that mental health was one of the top priorities on that platform was super important. And now, especially, I would like to say that all the parties focused on it, no matter which way they focused on it in their party ideologies, they all kind of focused on it. And I think now that it's great that everybody's on the same page, everybody believes that mental health is an issue that needs to be focused on more. And it's just amazing now that there's that light being given to it. And we won't speak much more past of that, but it'll be interesting now that the House is back in session to look at mental health and how parliamentarians will work forward with it. So we have a couple minutes left in the interview, and we'll go on to our last question that we ask every single member guest on our show, which is advice for the next generation, where we'll talk about youth involvement in politics more. So the question is, what should young high school Conservatives do in order to get more politically active? And what is one piece of advice that you would give them? Any piece of advice?
So get involved in a campaign, get involved in a board, get involved. All of our political boards have 30 positions on them. Actually, I'm not sure if everyone in the country has 30 positions on it, but that's the sort of standard. And we're always looking for good people who want to contribute to be part of our boards, and then and certainly to come out and door knock during campaigns. This last campaign, we had a fantastic door knocking crew. I think we had 10 people come out door knocking who were under 17. And so it's a great way to learn. It's a great way to get involved. In our party at 14, you can have a membership in the party, which allows you to vote in nominations. It allows you to vote, whenever there's a leadership race. It allows you to go to convention. It allows you to vote in your riding EDA, like AGMs, and vote for your board members if you're not going to be on the board. Get involved in those ways, and just know that not very many people do. So those that do step up have a say bigger than what you might imagine. And if you sort of have a heart for it, if you're if you're wired in a way that might fit, consider running one day and start to think about it. And if you do think about it, if you do think you might want to be involved in politics one day, this is a lot of advice. It's not just one piece of advice. Watch your social media feeds. Watch what it is that you're posting on social media, because that's with you forever once you get going. So think about that. The second you're opening up your first Twitter account or Facebook account or whatever it might be careful right from the start on those things, because those trails kind of follow you around.
Some great advice, and social media definitely plays a big part in our lives, and making that connection again, a big part of mental health. And I think social media, just like you said, that was perfect advice and perfect way to remember what you post. Think twice before you post it. Will it harm me? Is it mean? Should I not be posting it? I know it's standard stuff now, but just think before you post. So that's it. Thanks, Mike, for joining me. It was a really insightful and amazing conversation we had. Thank you for joining me. If you enjoyed today's interview, look for more videos coming soon. Make sure to follow our Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok accounts at Ontario OHS Cons for more info about our next interview and for more great content. Make sure to look at our website at OntarioHSConservatives.org to learn more about us, to see our projects, and for more great content. For our YouTube viewers, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss a video. And for our podcast listeners, make sure to follow us and stay updated with new episodes. Thank you all for coming, and we hope to see you all soon.